because this past week, 35 years of the Don't Be Cruel album and the Any Heartbreak album, and I didn't realize that they were both released on the same day. That
Wow.
MCA released both the Don't Be Cruel album and
Wow.
NCA. And I do wonder the twist of fate that would have been. I doubt if they had expected either album to blow up. Maybe they thought New Edition was going to be bigger because they had Jimmy and Terry, but I don't know if they expected both albums to last as it was. But also Bobby's album to because Bobby opened for New Edition. Then before the end of the tour, they were opening for him because he was that team. It was New Edition, Albie Shaw, and Bobby. And Bobby opened, then Albie was second. Did you go to it?
He got, put it like this, he got 30 minutes when they went out on stage. And I remember, because I remember like when 88 had dropped and the album had come out and it was still kind of like gaining traction because Don't Be Cruel was my Prerogative really just blew it up. But there's a moment in time, like you said, he only got 30 minutes. I remember when he had come out at that time, he said, I got 30 minutes, but I'm going to work these 30 minutes. And by the time, like you said, the tour was over, he was headlining over both of them. Because when you look at that album, both of those records, they come out the same day, and you got to give Gerald Busby a lot of credit because he saw the vision to drop these albums at the same time. But you just never really know what it's going to be,
Yeah.
But think about it. The previous New Edition album, that they did one in 84, they did one in 85, and both of those records were like platinum. But Heartbreak obviously was the one that really put them over the edge and solidified them. So you got to give MCA a lot of credit for working those records.
But I mean, Stevie, did you, if you had to pick between the two albums, what would you pick? Heartbreak or Don't Be Cruel?
At the time, I'd have picked Don't Be Cruel. 35 years on?
35 years, yeah.
I played the New Edition album more, even though it probably sounds a bit more dated production-wise. There's some of the production on that. I think, it's a bit ropey now, but I don't know. It's that whole transition of Boys to Men, and I kind of get with that because that's what I went through growing up, so I relate to it more. It's a tough one. It's really tough.
Yeah, it like you said, it's really tough. And when you look at both of those albums, it's kind of in a way you could say, I don't want to say style over substance, because obviously the whole New Jack Swing thing going on with Bobby, but I think that both of them have aged well. There's certain songs on those albums that are like, yeah, they kind of dated, but for the most part, when you look in terms of the hits that come off of them, they do a good job of transporting you back to that time. I think I would give Don't Be Cruel the edge. And the reason why I say that, the reason why I give Don't Be Cruel over the edge is that you got different textures of Bobby Brown on that album, because you're seeing the Alien Babyface productions, you're seeing the Teddy Riley productions, and then you're seeing the other productions that he got from like Larry White. So you're seeing different vibes, and that album kind of like sets the tone of what you see Usher would do later on. The reason why, and then with the New Edition, obviously Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis produced the entire album, top to bottom. But when you look in terms of the album, I think is stronger as a whole than its individual parts. So don't get me wrong. If It Isn't Love is an anthem. Sorry, You're Not My Kind of Girl, dope.
Yeah.
But I think what gives that album its staying power, I think Can You Stand the Rain is the anchor for that album. Even though, If It Isn't Love is the favorite, and the other song that I mentioned, but really I think Can You Stand the Rain kind of like solidifies that. That's the anchor. If that song is not there, then we're talking about the album, but we're not talking about it in regards of how maybe we will refer to the Bobby Brown album. You know, that's my opinion.
I'll say one thing about the Don't Be Cruel album though, and is the mastering of it is incredible. It's one of the best mix and mastered albums of the New Jack Swing era. I was playing it in my car about a couple of months ago, and I was listening to it, and I thought I'd say to any R&B artist now, play that album from start to finish, and listen how it's mastered and mixed. Sonically, it's incredible.
And the sequencing of the songs are excellent. You know, it's like all the great, I guess it was a conscious effort. You know, it starts off with the Don't Be Cruel instrumental, like it's a suite, and then it goes into the song, then it goes into My Prerogative, and it's really, really great. So I would say the weaker songs are at the end, you know, but even still, it's a classic album, man. You know, and it's kind of hard, Namdi, like what you were saying before, because there were so many videos released off of that album, so it's kind of hard when you have to try your hardest to separate the visuals, the visual excitement, and just really block that out and just listen to both albums back to back, without the visuals, because the visuals are so strong with both of those records, you know, Heartbreak and Don't Be Cruel. But I'm glad that those are milestones for those guys, because those two albums are keeping them in the game now. Everything else they did, all due respect for the stuff they did prior to those two albums. Yeah.
Well, I mean, guys who are listening, let us know your thoughts. But as I said, I think that the you know, anytime there's a poll when it comes to songs, Can You Stand the Rain is almost like the R&B black anthem. So, you know, that no one can beat that. If I put that track against any song ever, it wins hands down. So there's a sentimental attachment to that. It beats Ronnie, it beats everything. But I think the Don't Be Cruel album,
yes,
I think that, you know, Bobby Brown took, you know, it's you know, from Every Little Step, My Prerogative. I didn't like My Prerogative, strangely enough, but I think Every Little Step and Don't Be Cruel, and just the emergence of Bobby, I think it's you know, unlike say Michael, who, you know, started as a kid and with his brothers and kind of grew. You know, Bobby was kind of forgotten after he left New Edition, and then he did, you know, a sort of not memorable sort of the college, is it Girlfriend? And I mean, it was, you know, it was that
Girlfriend,
the King of Stage album, or King of Stage,
and the Girl Next Door.
It was really, you know, sort of boring, and then he pops out with this, and his rap was easy to rap along to, so you knew the words, and you looked and said, "Oh, that's a 560 SEC kind of thing." It almost it was such a like, wow, this guy's like us kind of thing. Yeah, but I love This It Isn't Love and Not My Kind of Girl. I didn't like Johnny Gill. Yes, I remember now. I thought he was taking Ralph's spot. I'm like, who's this guy? He just joined the group and he's singing lead. I was like, who's the guy? You know, I mean, yeah, that's how I felt. Like, who's this guy? He just joined and he's upstage, and the Belle Biv DeVoe sitting at the back, like in the videos. But you know, he turned the thing around. And
but the thing is, when they did,
go on, Sheldon.
When they did Can You Stand the Rain, Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis talked about they were listening when they were kids. There was a group called the Stylistics that was out in the 70s, and they had a record out called You Make Me Feel Brand New. And the record started out with one vocalist, and then it went into the falsetto. And that's basically what they patterned their record out after. And that was their way of strategy of introducing also Johnny to the public as a singer, but it was still in the domain of the familiar sound that Ralph had already established. So it was like a strategy when they created that record. So, but when you're right, but Johnny turned the whole thing around. He made them a more mature group.
Yeah, I mean, think of it, Stevie. I mean, how many groups have transitioned from kids to adults and been successful outside of New Edition? I mean, can you think of any other group that we saw them as kids, like teenagers, and then all of a sudden they could, and that's the album, you know, those types of songs, that type of really helped them move across to be able to be relevant. Because prior to that, who was listening to any of their other albums? I mean, I can't even remember. I know the first two albums, then Heartbreak.
People were listening to those albums because at the time when they were making the albums, remember, there's no young people out. So remember, those albums are going platinum. So you got 16 and 15, 16, 14-year-olds buying the records. But that record that you talk about now, they're like entering their 20s. So the timing was perfect. It was right in the pocket. Because if they would have tried to put something else out, like in the vein of what they did, they would have just been dead in the water. So it was like perfect timing, even with the Bobby situation. It was like his sound, it were older people producing his records. So now, but he came out at the time, the next album is coming out, there's a new sound, but they're custom making those records for him, and it's right in the pocket. So it's like you got the music, you got the visual charisma that he already had, that he's able to unleash, and then there's the rap energy that he puts in the record. So it's like a three-punch combination, so to speak, that exists. Yeah,